This is the 45th annual program in this community. It was started in 1980 by a group of dedicated community members across Silver Spring. We have a shared resolve that we will never forget the murder of 6 million Jews in Europe just 80 years ago. Given the continued rise of anti-Semitism, about the war in Gaza, and the renewed rise of anti-Semitism in the United States and worldwide. Such events like tonight are especially important. We must always stand together against Jew hatred wherever and whenever it manifests. The Yom HaShoah program is hosted by KMS and Shomrai, alternating every year. But it's not just KMS and Shomrai. It is also generously co-sponsored by the Berman Hebrew Academy, or Torah Congregation, Sulam, Torah School of Greater Washington, Woodside Synagogue, and the Yeshiva of Greater Washington. We are very happy to say that we truly are a community-wide program. To begin this program this evening, it's my honor to introduce the Mora D'Asra of Young Israel Shomrai Emunah, Rabbi Dovid Rosenbaum, who will share a few words with us tonight.
Good evening. Thank you everyone for coming. It's so important and valuable for us to come together as a community. Of course, thank you so much specifically to Mrs. Cohen for coming to share her experiences and words with us. Thank you. And of course, on behalf of everyone, I would like to thank the members of the Holocaust Committee. Special thank you, of course, to Debbie Katz and Lisa Melman, but all the members of the Holocaust Committee. It's at Young Israel Shomrai Emunah, we're so honored to host the program this year. But as Debbie said, I think it's really beautiful that people from throughout the community come to join. Just to follow up on a point Debbie touched on a moment ago, I'm sure I'm not the only one who thinks of Yom HaShoah differently since October 7th. I think there was a time where if you asked me why is Yom HaShoah important, I thought to myself, Yom HaShoah is important because it's important to know that there's such a thing. There was once such a thing as ruthless hatred for our people. It's pretty concrete in our times. I recently came across an essay based on talks from Rabbi Beryl Wine, and he makes a very basic point that I just want to share with you for a few moments. Where does this evil in the world come from? And Rabbi Wine points out, evil in the world comes from the beginning of humanity. There's Cain and Hevel, Cain and Abel. Cain is jealous of Abel, and he kills him. Fast forward 10 generations, and we have Noah, who survives the flood, and he has 3 sons, Shem, Cham, and Yefes. Soon after the flood, Noah becomes drunk, and Cham steps forward to do something utterly despicable to his father. That was evil. But Shem represented good, and Shem stepped forward to stop him. Go forward in the story of the Bible. Abraham and Sarah, Avram and Sarah have a child, Yitzchak, Isaac, but we know that's not his only child. Isaac grapples with Yishmael, a righteous son and a son who does so many other things. Then we have Yaakov, Jacob. Jacob had a challenging relationship with his brother Esav. What does Esav do? What does Esav say he's going to do when things don't work out his way? He says he's going to kill Jacob. that same basic solution that Cain said about Abel all those generations before. And Rabbi Wein says, you know what you see from all of this? God creates a world that has evil in it. But God also creates a world that has good in it. And going back to the sons of Noah, it's interesting, there's a third son. There's Chum, who wants to do something evil, and there's Shem, who wants to do something good, and then there's Yefes, and he's somewhere in between. And the challenge for the people who want to do good in this world is to somehow, some way, pull the Yefeses of this world, the people in the middle, more to our side, help them understand. So Yom HaShoah, tragically, is nothing new. And October 7th, tragically, is nothing new. This is a world that has evil. It's a very dark, depressing thought. But I think if we slightly tilt it, there's a tremendous amount of encouragement that comes. Because yes, there's evil in the world, but there's also good in the world. And the same way that until the ultimate redemption comes, there'll be evil, God ensures there will always be good. However dark things seem, we have this assurance that the good people, and particularly our nation, the nation of the Jews, will endure. I'm sure we'll hear many difficult things to hear from Mrs. Cohen tonight, but the very fact that she's here with her family to share her story is proof of that. And I think it also speaks to the importance of good people banding together, similar to what Debbie said. If we always believe that there'll be evil, what that means is we have to see our own goodness, and we have to see the goodness of others and band together to fight that evil wherever it might be in the world. And of course, we as people who believe in God need to believe that there's always the potential for prayer, and that as we stand against evil in whatever form and whatever place, we have the greatest of allies, which is our Father in heaven. We'll say one chapter of Tehillim together, chapter 130. It can be found on the screen. It should just be as a merit that God should watch over the people of Israel, particularly all those still impacted by the terrible war in Israel right now, be it the hostages, be it the soldiers who are in harm's way, and beseeching God to bring much consolation and blessing to the Jews and to the entire world of people who do good. Kuf Lamed 130. We'll say it responsively. Shira malos mimamakim krosicho Adonai. Adonai shimavi koli tianos necha kashuvos lekol tachanunai. Im avonos tishmor ya Adonai miyamod. Kim chaslicha leman tivarei. Kivisi Adonai kivasa nafshi v'lidvaro ocholti. Nafshi l'Adonai mishomerim laboker, shomerim laboker. Yachil Yisrael el Adonai, ki im Adonai achased, v'arbei mofedos. V'hu yiftes Yisrael mikol avonosah. Achenu kol beis Yisrael anasunim batzara v'ashivya, ha'omdim bein bayam uvein bayabasha, hamakom yirachem aleihem v'yotziyeim mitzara l'rvacha, u'me'afela liora mishibud l'giyula, hashta bagolav zman kariv, v'nomar amen.
Thank you so much, Rabbi. Very moving, important words. This year, the Berman Hebrew Academy and the Girls Yeshiva both did learning, Torah learning, to commemorate the 6 million. At Berman Hebrew Academy, the students completed learning the Rambam Hilchos Shabbos, Hilchos Talmud Torah, and Hilchos Malachim. At the Girls Yeshiva, they learned Bechevruza and collectively completed Sefer Pirkei Avos in the Zuchus of the Kedoshim. So very important that our younger generation have a clear understanding of what happened in the Second World War and, as we know, are still happening today in different ways. So a big yasher koach to both schools. This year, we're in the 7th year of the Generations program. Each year, the Generations program brings 6 children of survivors or grandchildren of survivors from around the Silver Spring community to tell their family stories. At this point, that means 42 different families have been spotlighted in this program, the Generations program, which Sylvia Goldberg coordinated for many, many years. The Holocaust touched members of our own community and every Jewish community very personally. Even as we're sad for the passing of the survivors, we want to pay attention to the fact that they chose to live lives fully as proud, practicing Jews and passing the traditions on to their children and grandchildren. That is the ultimate answer to Hitler. We start the Generations program with our first speaker, Elisa Stiglitz.
My parents, Mala and Joseph Stieglitz, were both Holocaust survivors. My mom passed away in August at 93, and my dad in 1991 at 63, largely due to health issues stemming from his Holocaust experience. My dad's story was particularly tragic, yet despite his hardships and pain, he never complained. Nearly his entire family perished. Of 7 siblings, only he, his older brother, and sister survived. Radum's Hasidim, my dad's family lived in Sosnovitz, an industrial city near Auschwitz. My dad's older brother escaped via the Shanghai Yeshiva, but my dad and his sister were not as lucky and endured years in labor and concentration camps. Although their experiences were largely unspoken, his trauma was evident through recurring nightmares and declining health. After the war, my dad was in a DP camp in Germany before immigrating to New York, where he reunited with his 2 siblings. My mom lived in Radymno, a small village in southeastern Poland, until age 8. Sensing imminent danger, my grandmother alerted the rabbi, but her warnings were rebuffed. The next day, my mom, her brother, parents, and extended family escaped to Ukraine just before the Nazis arrived. Eventually, my mom's family settled in Siberia, suffering very harsh weather. Still, my mom fondly remembered summers when she would gather the sweetest blueberries. Later, they moved to Leninbad, Tajikistan in Central Asia. The climate was warmer, but the Tajiks, Sunni Muslims, were hostile to them. In 1942, my mom attended a small school where she made lifelong friends. After the war, my mom's family returned to Krakow in search of surviving relatives. My mom's paternal grandparents and other family members relocated to Paris, intending to emigrate to Palestine. While waiting, my grandmother received papers from her sister, who had moved to New York before the war, enabling my mom's immediate family to move to Brooklyn. The rest of the extended family eventually settled in Israel. In Brooklyn, my grandparents started anew selling textiles. My mom attended Roosevelt High School at night, working during the day. In 1954, she and my dad married. In 1965, our family moved from Crown Heights to Hillcrest, Queens. In 1969, due to my dad's health needs, we relocated to Beverly Hills. There, my dad pursued business opportunities and later found success in real estate. Extremely active in our Shul Beth Jacob, he was known for his behind-the-scenes chesed. My dad's motto, Mitchen machen, we will make do, remains my guiding principle. My mom, the family matriarch, became a pillar of resilience. She lived on her own and managed her business and personal affairs until the start of COVID. She lived by the idea, for a simcha, you put yourself out, and would therefore fly across country to be at every simcha and spend quality time with all her grandchildren. Throughout her life, she also launched numerous charitable causes. In the 1960s, she helped establish a Bikur Cholim society in Queens. And upon her mother's passing in 1984, she founded the Haknasa Kala in Los Angeles in memory of her mom, Fagi Dominance Rabner. My parents' legacy lives on through their 4 children, 11 grandchildren, and 15 great-grandchildren. Yehi Zichron Baruch. May their memory be a blessing.
I'm lighting this candle in memory of my parents and other family members now gone who were touched by the Holocaust, both in recognition of the losses and in honor of the profound strength and courage of the survivors. Yad Vashem's records say that Jews of Bykeishaba, where I was born after the war, were delivered to Auschwitz on June 29, 1944. My paternal grandparents, my father's first wife, and their baby, my sister, were sent to their deaths that day. My Aunt Anna endured and survived the camp to later raise a family and be one of the brightest and optimistic people I've ever known. My father had been taken to a work camp before other family members were sent to Auschwitz. At the end of the war, he and his brother were liberated by the Russians, who blamed the Jews for the Holocaust. They sought to send those liberated to Siberia to repay Russia for its losses on their account. My father sensed the danger of staying with the Russians, and after unsuccessfully trying to persuade his brother to escape with him, he jumped from the train and eventually made his way back to Bykeishaba to start over. My mother's family, through the sheer grit of my Aunt Lily, managed to stay together. We think they must have been on a train that was diverted through the negotiations of Weissmandl with the Nazis. Weissmandl is said to have demanded that the Nazis prove that if paid off, they could divert trains to Austria. The guard pointed to a train scheduled for Auschwitz and redirected it to a camp in Austria. However it happened exactly, my maternal grandparents and their children, my mother, aunts, and uncles, survived the war. Events on that side of the family are wonderfully huge.
I'm Sylvia Laufer Goldberg. Both my parents survived the Shoah. My beloved father, Joseph Laufer, lived in Bielsko-Biala, Poland. He was one of 11 children. Prior to the war, he and half his siblings were married with families. My father had two young daughters, Rivka and Mindel. His twin brother Samuel and his sister Miriam, a medical student, lived together in Berlin with Samuel's family until the Germans violently removed them. He had a grandfather, Baruch Yitzchak Cohen Katz, a Bobover Chassid. The children spent a lot of time with him as youngsters, as adults. They went to the spa with him. One of his 9 daughters was Gusti Laufer, my father's mother. She was a prolific letter writer and wrote to her daughter Miriam during the war. I am fortunate to have some of that correspondence. My father traveled extensively before the war, worked hard, owned plants, always was there to help extended family as needs arose. During the war, most of the family, including his daughters, whom he tried to shelter in the forest, were deported to death camps, none returned. My father spent years in various harsh and brutal slave labor camps. 3 of his siblings survived, one in London, one in Palestine, and one in Siberia. My dearest mother, Janina Rosenblatt, was a young concert pianist in Częstochowa, Poland. Her father, Moritz, was an accountant, and her mother also, Sophia, was a pianist. She had a brother, Bolek, lots of cousins, but most she enjoyed spending time with her grandparents at their kosher restaurant and hotel. The German invasion in September 1939 ended it all. The family was forced to move into the town's overcrowded ghetto. She escaped with the help of her father and a priest who supplied her false identity. Alone and living day to day as the now Catholic Karolina Otremka, she worked in a restaurant miles away from home. Later, she was forced labor in a missions camp where she learned to sleep standing up. Finally, back in her town, there was great loss. No one survived. My father's liberation from the Częstochowa camp was fortuitous. My parents met at a meal at a kosher home. They married, fled to Munich to escape the Russians, where I and my brother Leo were born. Palestine was a consideration, but we eventually came to live in Los Angeles. It was simply a wonder. My parents fulfilling a desire to move forward, raise a family in a Jewish community, in which they were a major part. My father was president of our Young Israel. He sat on the board of the yeshiva. My mother performed events with her talent at piano and also poetry. And they modeled for us joy, good deeds, and observance. This is their legacy. I married Peter Goldberg. We have 3 wonderful sons and 3 amazing granddaughters. May the memory of Yosef Meir ben Rav Yehuda Leib and Rivka Bat Moshe serve as a blessing for us.
My father, Bernard Wasserman, was born in 1923 in Ermreit, Bavaria, a small village with a thriving Jewish community. His grandfather was a cattle dealer and a butcher, and the family was observant, attending shul, keeping Shabbat, preparing traditional foods. My father had 3 siblings, all who perished in the Holocaust. His mother, originally from Kernensbach, Baden, was sent to America as a child due to financial hardships. but later returned to Germany, where the family lost most of their savings during the 1923 inflation crisis. Growing up in Germany, my father experienced increasing anti-Semitism. Jewish students were harassed in school, and by the 1930s, restrictions against Jews intensified. His father was arrested, and kosher slaughter was banned. As Nazi persecution worsened, the family attempted to emigrate, but securing affidavits was very difficult. In 1938, my father was sent to the US alone with the hopes of bringing his family later. However, as World War II escalated, communication dwindled, and by 1941, all contact ceased. His father died from injuries inflicted by the Nazis, and his mother and siblings were deported and killed in concentration camps. Arriving in the U.S. in 1938, my father was taken in by a Baltimore family. He struggled with his English, but he adapted and later worked at a hat factory. At 16, he dropped out of school to support himself and took night classes. In 1943, he was drafted into the U.S. Army, where he underwent training, but was not deployed overseas due to medical conditions. He became a U.S. citizen while serving. After the war, he attended butcher school in New York and found work in the Bronx before moving to Baltimore. In 1948, he met my mother, Hetty Loeb, whom he married in 1949. They eventually settled in Baltimore, where he bought a kosher butcher shop to maintain his religious lifestyle. Though starting the business was challenging, he succeeded over time. My mother, Hetty Loeb, was born in 1927 in St. Ingbert, Saar, Germany. She had 4 sisters and a brother. Her family was not religious, but observed all the holidays. Her family fled to France in 1935, but was later expelled and relocated to Brussels, Belgium. When the Germans occupied Belgium in 1940, her family attempted to flee to England, but were captured and sent back to Brussels. They lived in hiding, with my mother working as a seamstress. In 1942, her sister was taken by the Nazis, never to be seen again. Her parents were later arrested and deported along with her other sisters, and they were killed in concentration camps. My mother lived in hiding. Lost my place. My mother lived in hiding with a Belgian family from 1943 to 1945 with falsified papers until the war ended. My mother, her surviving sister, and only brother came to New York in 1947 with the help of her family members. In 1948, my mother met my father at Jones Beach on Long Island on July 4th weekend, and they were married in October of 1949. They moved to Baltimore in 1950 after my father acquired a butcher shop. My mother's sister is now 88 and lives in Chatsworth, California. My aunt's story and her late husband's story is part of the Shoah Foundation. Her brother, Joe, lives in Yonkers, New York. He is 86. This tragic yet resilient history reflects the struggles and perseverance of Jewish families during and after the Holocaust.
I'm here to tell the story of my mom, Vera. Good evening. I'm here to tell the story of my mom, Vera Kestenberg, who was born in Budapest in 1936. In 1938, my grandparents were on a business trip to Germany, where my grandmother heard Hitler speak and announce his desire to make Europe Judenfrei, free of all Jews. Upon returning home from the trip, They discussed the events they experienced, and my grandmother expressed her desire to leave Budapest, whereas my grandfather did not feel the same urgency. After all, leaving meant leaving behind a successful family paper manufacturing business, and this was no option. Fast forward to 1944, when Hitler marched into Budapest and things got very bad. By this time, my mom was 8 years old, and efforts were made to save her. With a forged birth certificate and a few months of practice, she went into hiding, assuming the identity of a Christian 8-year-old child of a family that worked for my grandparents. In 1945, she was able to resume school, ultimately completing her education with a bachelor's degree in biochemistry. After several unsuccessful attempts to escape, she and the family finally succeeded to escape Budapest in 1956 to Buenos Aires. There, she married her Jewish Hungarian boyfriend, my father, and they ultimately landed in Baltimore in 1959, where she continues to live independently today. She has 3 children, 10 grandchildren, and too many great-grandchildren to count, who bring her much joy and happiness. And I'm happy to say that she's actually here with us tonight.
My mother, Hanna Blume-Aranovich, nee Edelkind, was born in November 1921 in Tartu, Estonia. Her father, my Zede Aaron, worked as a procurement buyer for a large manufacturer, while her mother, my Bobe Shene, owned a kosher restaurant and hotel in southern Estonia near a large lake. My father, Yakov Aranovich, was born in January 1919 in Tallinn, Estonia. His father, Shmerl, was a hat maker, and his mother, Malke, was a housewife. At the start of World War II in September 1939, Estonia was an independent nation and a member of the League of Nations. However, in June 1940, Estonia was occupied and forcibly incorporated into the Soviet Union. This led to abandonment. Jewish cultural autonomy and all Jewish institutions, including Jewish schools, were shut down. When German army Wehrmacht attacked Soviet Union in June 1941, they advanced quickly through the Baltic states due to minimal resistance from the Red Army. By July 7, 1941, Wehrmacht forces had crossed Estonia's southern border, bringing the war dangerously close to my mother's family in Tartu. My mother's parents initially hesitated to flee to Russia. This was the only route available, as my Bobe had a dramatic experience visiting her half-brother in Moscow in the 1930s. However, my mother insisted that if they didn't leave, she would escape with her friend. Ultimately, thanks to warning of German refugees about the fate of Jews under Nazi rule, her parents decided to flee. The escape was incredibly difficult. The trains were primarily reserved for the Soviet military transport, and Wehrmacht forces were closing in. After numerous failed attempts, my Zede's brother managed to secure tickets on the last boat to Pskov, Russia, some 100 miles away, departing just 48 hours before the Wehrmacht entered Tartu. However, the boat's crew, fearing Luftwaffe, German Air Force raids, refused to take passengers to Pskov and left them 25 miles away. My mother Hannah and her family had to continue on foot under constant bombardment, avoiding main roads. It took some days to reach Pskov. There they found and boarded a train packed with civilians in a cattle cars. They endured more bombardments during the long journey over 1,000 miles to Kazan, Russia. After spending several months in Kazan, they traveled to Samarkand, Uzbekistan, Central Asia, some 1,600 miles away, in September 1941. In Samarkand, they settled and lived until October 1944. By then, the Red Army had liberated Estonia, so it remained under Soviet occupation. My mother met my father in Estonia, actually even before the World War II, and they married in November 1945. Before the war, Estonia had approximately 5,000 Jews, but nearly 1,000 Jews entrapped in Estonia were all murdered. In January 1942, Estonia was declared Judenfrei, free of Jews, at the Wannsee Conference near Berlin. Despite that and Hitler's intentions, Estonia today has a thriving Jewish community and one of the most beautiful synagogues in Europe. Thank you. Memory of my parents.
Thank you all for that very moving presentation. Very, very important stories, all of them. So now it is my pleasure to introduce a conversation between our honored guest, Mrs. Ruth Cohen, and Lisa Melman, the co-chair of this evening's program. Please give them your full attention. They're going to be seated right here and we'll be ready to go. We ask that you hold all of your questions until the end of the conversation, depending upon whether we have time. We'll try to field a few. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. If anybody wants to move, you can see us. There's some seats over here in the back, or you can look at the screen. Although I don't see Helen on this one. There we go. Welcome. Thank you for being here. We're honored to have a living survivor with us today. We've heard so much about other survivors who also came to this country and who made a life, and we're just honored to have you here together with your husband, Ben, your daughter, Barbara, and Stefan. So please, everybody, welcome them. Thank you. Ruth, you were born in April 1930 in Mukacevo, Czechoslovakia, which was later became Mukacevo, Hungary.
Right.
Can you tell us about your parents, Herman Friedman and Bertha Schwartz, your brother Ari, and your sister Teresa? Menashe, can you put up that slide, please?
Okay.
Keep going.
My dad, Herman, had a business of alcohol. In other words, he made from alcohol, he made wine, beer, and liqueurs. So it was a government certified business. My mom was a very active person in all religious Zionist organizations, and our family was raised in the ultra-Orthodox tradition. My sister was 7 years older than I. My brother was a year and a half younger than I.
Menashe, can you advance the slide, please? We have a picture here, Ruth, on the right side of your mom and you and Ari, and I don't know if you can see, but you're holding the football.
Yes,
The picture all the way on the right.
yes,
Can you talk a little bit about that picture?
yes. We received presents from the United States regularly from our family.
What were their names?
Stern, Fanny Stern, and Aaron Stern, and Alexander Schwartz. We received the gifts, and as we received them, my mother dressed us and took us to this neighbor's entrance to their backyard, took a picture, and sent it to our family. That's why we have pictures now.
Those pictures
They say
from them.
everything we have is, yes.
Could you advance the slides, please? And go back one. Sorry. And in these pictures, I'm sorry to make.
It's okay, it's okay.
You're acting out in a play?
No, there was not a play. There was a Tiroli ball going on in Switzerland and Austria. And my mother just made clothing for us. Yes, she made it also.
So you had a just regular fun childhood.
Yes.
Everything was normal
Yes,
in 1930. Mukacevo had about 45,000 people, roughly a third, 12,000 were Jewish. Can you tell us a little bit about the Jewish life in the town and if you felt any anti-Semitism?
I don't remember feeling any anti-Semitism ever there. The Jewish community was mixed. We had Orthodoxy, of course, the Mukacevo Rebbe was there, was the Belzer Rebbe lived close to them. I don't know where the Spinker Rebbe lived, but he was at our house very often. He was not too far from us. Yes, he was in Spink, Poland.
What was the school like?
We went to we were Orthodox, but we went to a Zionist school, all children, all of them, my sister and my brother.
And on Shabbat, tell us about what Ari did on Shabbat, how he prepared.
Well, he was what we call the Talmid Chacham. He had to prepare to be able to debate the Parsha Friday night at services. And that's what he did.
He was very good at that, wasn't he? In 1939, Ruth, when you were about 8 years old, Czechoslovakia was
38.
Czechoslovakia was invaded by Hungary, and now
No, Czechoslovakia was not invaded yet.
Czechoslovakia was split up,
Right.
and now your
We
town
became
was
Hungary.
part of Hungary.
Right.
Can you tell us what happened at that time?
Well, the very next day, the Hebrew Gymnasium, which was a
co-ed school, became a girls and boys in separate classes with the exact same curriculum, but yet separated. My dad's business was taken away immediately
Was taken away. Who was it given to?
to somebody from Budapest who came down, and my dad had to, no, well, for a year he had to teach this person how to do all that. I don't know whether he got paid or not. I have no idea about money matters.
What happened with the nanny who used to care for you?
She had to go back the very next day
Because she wasn't allowed anymore to work.
to work for Jews,
Yeah.
which was a German rule.
Menashe,
Right.
could you go to the next slide, please? No. That, okay. In 1942, you had a lot of extended family in Slovakia. What did your family find out that happened then?
This is too loud.
It's fine. Fine.
We found out that my uncle, his wife, his 3 children, and another aunt were taken to Majdanek and murdered right away. We went into mourning and never came out of it until we went to Auschwitz ourselves.
And then you had some other cousins as well, who,
Well, we adopted 2 children from Slovakia to save them. Unfortunately, they went to Auschwitz with us before their parents did. That was a different story. Their parents were hiding Jews, I don't know where, but in their house, with sort of government permission. They had to pay for each person to someone in the government to be able to hide them. And in November, they were ratted out and taken to Auschwitz.
Menashe, I think you can put Ruth and I back on the screen, might be more helpful for the audience. Okay. And around 1941, 1942, some Polish girls came to your town.
Right.
What did you learn from them?
Well, they came to the town and some of them stayed in our house. And I overheard them tell my parents about what's happening in Poland. Namely, they said that the girls, this was all about girls, were standing around a large piece of land. They had to dig there. They had to dig some graves, stand next to them and shot, that were being shot and fell in. It became a mass grave.
And when you heard that, what was your reaction? What was your parents' reaction?
I don't know what my parents' reaction was.
But this was going on far away from you, right?
No.
Nobody ever thought it could
It's not
come.
going to happen to us.
Not going to happen.
But
to
of
us.
course, it was a terrible thing.
That was around 1941,
Yeah,
1942.
yeah.
And then everything was going okay. Life was,
It's going okay.
and then in March 1944, the Germans invaded Hungary.
Right.
What happened then? What did you tell them?
We woke up on I think, either the 8th or the 13th of March, to tanks all over the city with a horrible noise. That was the first thing.
The noise.
Yeah. 3 weeks later, we were told to leave our house, pack some things, pack some clothes, pack some dishes, pack some food, and go to a designated area, which was one of the ghettos in our area. There were 3 ghettos. The others were filled with the rest of the city.
And how did you know what to pack, what to bring, where you were going?
Well, they told us where to go, but we didn't know what to pack because how much can you carry?
You packed some pots and some pans. Your mom
Yeah.
Wanted to make sure you had some food.
Well, no, they suggested that we do that. And we went to an area, as I said, I think about 3 blocks away, which was a very small ghetto. This was just before Pesach, and I have absolutely no memory of it, so something I can
But you
talk
told
about.
me about receiving some new clothes for your birthday.
Well, because it was my birthday, I was 14. I received, well, everybody received their Pesach clothes before Pesach, but I received something special, a pair of nylon stockings and a pair of shoes with heels a little smaller than these, but they were high heels. So.
And that's what you wore.
That's what I
That's
wore.
what you packed.
That's what I wore. That's what I wore. And I wore it to 3 weeks later when we were told to go from the ghetto to the brick factory.
What
With
happened
the
at-
trains.
So you went from the ghetto to the brick factory, and at the brick factory was the trains.
Yes.
And what did you see there? What happened on the steps of the brick factory? Your teacher.
That was one of the first horrors that I saw. We saw actually. My chemistry teacher, who was a truly fantastic person, decided not to take that step up, the first step of the train.
She didn't want to go on the train.
She wasn't going to go any place.
defiant.
They shot her and left her there.
And everybody saw.
Everybody saw and everybody watched. And everybody, yes,
Must have been horrifying.
yes.
Must have been chaos.
There was no chaos. Everything went very smoothly.
According to the Germans.
Mhm.
So then they put you on the trains.
We all went on the train. What's that?
What was, can you tell us about going on the train, being on the train?
Yes.
What that experience was like?
We were in cattle cars. Each car took 100 people. There was no room to sit, so everybody was standing. There must have been some kind of food that parents brought, but water we were not given. And that was sort of a torture, purposefully done by I don't know whether they were the Nazis or whether it was a Hungarian police, whoever, they were not giving us water. So it was quite rather terrible. We got to Auschwitz 3.5 or 4 days later. We had asked where we were going, but we were told that we were going upstate to some fields where we are going to be working the fields. Okay, we got to the sign, Arbeit macht frei. We had no idea where we were. We had no idea what it meant. I mean, we knew what it meant, but we had no idea what it meant for us. And we were hurried off the cars by German officers as well as prisoners and dogs. We were rushed off to go and stand in a specific spot where, in our case, Mengele was doing the
Selection.
thank you, the selection. My mother had my brother and 2 siblings, 2 little cousins. That way we went this way, and my dad went that way with the men to go to work.
So you and Teresa went one way
Right.
with the women.
Yeah, with the working people, yes.
And what happened then? Who did Teresa meet?
We, again, I have to say, I lost everything that happened between then and about 4 hours later. In the meantime, we were washed, we were deloused, we were shaven and dressed in the striped clothing.
Okay.
As we entered the barracks, a young woman ran to my sister. She recognized her from having been in summer camps 5 years prior.
This was Miriam Leitner.
Miriam Leitner, who was actually our lifesaver. She, aside from everything else, she told us what's going to be. She told everybody. She told us that my mother and siblings are no longer alive, which of course was not true. Couldn't be.
Unbelievable.
Right. And she gave us, my sister and myself, a piece of sugar that
A sugar cube.
right, which we swallowed right away. And for years, many, many, many years, I felt the sensation of the sugar in my blood system, because we haven't been eating, haven't been drinking, and this was the first thing we put in our mouths. So it was really a wondrous thing.
And Miriam gave you jobs.
And Miriam gave us jobs.
Tell us about
Miriam gave my sister a job to be her assistant, which was wonderful. And she got a job for me as a messenger girl,
And you were
which
one
was
of the
wonderful.
youngest, right?
No, there was one other younger one. I was 14. There was a 13-year-old.
So you were
Yeah,
14 years old and you're a messenger
Right.
in Auschwitz,
right.
going from barrack to barrack, street to street,
Not much memory of it. Okay.
bringing messages to people
Right,
at 14
right.
years old.
Yeah. I don't know if they were verbal or paper message. I have no idea. I got typhoid fever and was sent to the infirmary. I must have been very sick because I must have lost a lot of weight then and was very weak. We were getting the Nazis came in every day to check on us to see just how sick and weak we were. And the weakest and the sickest were pulled out and taken to the gas chambers. Each day, the nurses and the doctor hid me someplace in the back. And that's how I survived. Otherwise, I would have been taken out. So that was just one of the miracles.
Many, many miracles.
Yeah.
You had some chance encounters with your father
Right.
and with your uncle.
Right.
How did that come to be?
That I don't know, but it happened. My father sent us a message to come to one part of the electric wire, where he said we were going to see each other, and we did. We saw him. He was carrying blankets from Auschwitz to probably the I don't know, gas chamber or the crematorium, because that's the way they were walking. And so we saw him, we waved, we probably screamed.
Did you recognize him?
Yes. It was either the end of May or
So it was close after.
he was still recognizable.
Mhm.
And so were we. And then he went away, but it was just really glorious to see him. Yes, yes.
Your uncle.
This was about a month and a half later. We got another message from my uncle who had been in Theresienstadt, where they were taking, I don't know by what order, they took some people from Terezin, sent them to Auschwitz to be gassed. This was a periodic thing, and it went on to almost the end of the war. My uncle sent a message telling us to meet him at another spot. And we did. He told us that he'll be there for a few days And when he doesn't show up, we should know that he was gassed. We didn't know about this process until then. Anyway, 4 days later, we went there. And we went there every day on the fourth day or fifth day. There was a woman meeting us instead of him with his, sending us his love and that he no longer is alive.
It's been devastating.
It was more than devastating. When I think about it, I still get things in my head going. Even now. So that was in July.
What happens in October?
In October, on October 7th, which I just realized, so totally coincidental. I saw, as I was standing at the booth waiting for a message, I saw 2 push carts being pushed by 4 women. The push carts were totally covered with blankets. They went, we were here, they went this way, and then they turned down, and this is where the crematorium and gas chamber was. They disappeared, and a little while later, a few hours later, we heard a little bit of a explosion. And later we found out that they were not successful to accomplish what they went to accomplish, but they did some damage.
What did they want to accomplish?
They wanted to blow up. Okay, they wanted to blow up the gas chamber or the crematorium. I don't know which one. That was the plan.
So then what happened? What was the Germans' reaction to that?
The gas chambers were closed within 4 or 5 days. They started emptying Auschwitz. No, I don't know about Auschwitz. I'm talking about Birkenau, really, right? About 3 weeks after that, my sister and I and 550 other women were put on another cattle car and sent to Nuremberg, where we worked in a factory.
I don't know.
Where we worked in a factory making electric wire spools to be used on airplanes.
And what did you encounter in that factory?
Several times a week. We were only there for working 8 or 10 weeks. Several times a week, we found, when we came into work, we found, meaning there were 4 chairs around the table, and on every chair,
table.
yes, and every chair had a brown bag on it with either an apple or a slice of bread, or either one of them. Civilian workers were doing their wonderful bit at the risk, yes, at the risk of something, either their job or their life. I don't know what would have happened, but while we were there, they were not found out.
And you were there until about May 1945.
No,
You went to another camp after that. Static.
Is that it? Okay. We were here. Nuremberg was constantly being bombed. It was a completely bombed out city by the end of the war. Anyway, this was in January. No.
Thank you, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, go.
We left, we were taken out of Nuremberg. We went to near Pilsen, to Holishow, another camp, another factory, exactly the same kind that we were working at in Nuremberg. I got sick sometime in Nuremberg. When we were transported from Nuremberg to Holishov, somehow I was fine. Then we got to Holishov. I started working again in a week or so later. I was sick again and I never worked again. But they let you just stay in bed and there were no consequences.
And then in about May 1945, you were liberated
We were liberated on the last day of the war
of the last day of the
by
war.
the American troops.
And then what happened then? After
Really?
you were liberated, you walked out of the camp.
Not really. About a month later, my sister and I decided to just go home.
And you heard that your father
Right.
had gone back to your town.
Well, my father left messages on his slave. And then,
Maybe we just use the mic.
okay.
I'm not sure that's the problem, so. Trying to figure out what the problems here or there. So, and you're still on there too?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. I can hear them.
Is this working?
All right, in that case, turn the other one off. Hit the button.
Thank you. You were talking about being liberated.
No, I was.
You were talking about going to, you got the messages from your father that.
That he was on his way home. He
Yeah.
was on his way home and he's waiting for anybody, family or anyone who knows him. He is at home and he's waiting for us.
And you met him there in your house.
Well, yes, not in our house, but somehow we met him, which again, I have absolutely no memory of. I don't remember seeing him and hugging him. So.
But I'm sure you did.
I'm sure I did.
Yeah.
He got an apartment in my grandparents' house because they wouldn't let him or my sister, myself, into our house. So we lived in my grandfather in that apartment, which was fine.
And then you were sick.
And then I was sick again. So.
Oops. Yeah.
About 4 to 6 weeks later, my dad took me to Budapest, to the Jewish hospital, where they checked me for a month every day, 3 times, x-rayed 3 times and checked me 3 times and found nothing. So I went back to Munkac, and then this was the end of June, beginning of July. By September, I was really very sick. And somehow my dad got in touch with my aunt in Slovakia, who knew somebody in Bratislava. And my mother has had a friend in Bratislava in the hospital, in the children's hospital in Bratislava. And they managed to get a place for me, but not until March. This was only October. So I stayed at my aunt's house in Slovakia in bed all those months, I survived. And then in the hospital, I was for a year in a half cast. They found that I had tuberculosis on the spine, which was incurable, but this was the cure for it. Later on, they found streptomycin, which I never got because it was just too late for them to start. But
So it took you about a year to recover.
Took me a year there, then half a year in a
Yeah.
sanatorium.
In the meantime, Teresa was applying for visas
Well,
to go to America.
we received affidavits from America, and Teresa took care of, she managed all of that.
Can you pull up, Menashe, a picture of Ruth and Teresa after? Next. Yes, here's Ruth and Teresa before they were going to the United States. Can you go to the next slide, please? This is a picture of, okay, so you came to the United States, and talk about the boat and arriving here and what happened.
Well, we spent the first night of Pesach on the boat. We had a Seder for 700 people, because there were 700 survivors there. It
That
was
must have been
scene.
so emotional.
Of course it was. Plus the first time I saw parsley for, never heard of it before. Not a parsley, but to use it for, anyway, we arrived in New York at the,
Around your 18th birthday.
on my age.
On your 18th birthday.
We were taken to my aunt and uncle's house,
Your aunt and uncle who sent you all the gifts.
and all the affidavits and the money.
They sponsored you.
All that. And then that housed us for at least 6 weeks, 6 or 7 weeks. They were just amazing,
I'm sure.
absolutely amazing.
I'm sure.
So we spent the second night of Seder there, which was also amazing. And
You started a life here.
after Pesach, I started going to night school to learn English. My dad ultimately got a job as a presser of neckties through a friend from Mukacevo who had come here on time, opened the factory, and he really hired all these people, as many as he could.
Wow, what a chesed.
Work, yes. I went to school. I went to work. I met my husband.
You met your husband.
My husband, had my children.
Here's
and
a
I went
picture
on.
of you and at your wedding. You and Ben at your wedding. And then you lived in Queens.
Then we lived in Brooklyn, and
Brooklyn?
then we lived in Queens.
And then
Yep.
you have 3 children.
Yes.
Can you go to the next slide? This is a picture of Ruth with her extended family.
Those are the grandchildren.
And then you moved here about 14 years ago to this area.
About, yes,
And you volunteer in the Holocaust Museum,
right.
which is how we found Ruth to bring you here today. Ruth, in January 2025, just this past January, you returned to Auschwitz 80 years later.
Yes.
Was that your first time back?
Yes,
Your only time back?
the only time.
Okay. I'd like everybody to look at this clip on the screen of Ruth visiting Auschwitz.
Just a part of it, but it's
Yes.
Just a part.
we
Ruth Cohen was 14 when the Nazis forced her family onto cattle cars and deported them to Auschwitz for one reason. They were Jews. What's driving you to keep walking further in?
have to do everything.
Take a photo. You're smiling. What do you want people to see when they see you stand? What do you want
I'm
people to
fine. I'm here and I'm here and I'm here. And Hitler lost. I'm here. My daughter is here. My family is here. And I'm happy about it.
Do you have any last? Hold your applause for 1 second. Would you like to share with our audience a message that you can help us conclude with?
I would like to leave you with some thoughts. As you live your lives, and this is really meant for children and not for adults, but okay. As you live your lives, if and when you experience some kind or any kind of discrimination towards yourself, as well as others, like racism, bigotry, bullying, stand up and fight. Be ready to counter these acts with words of teaching and explaining, as well as by example. Work to influence others to change their attitudes and behaviors in the present and for the future. Through your actions, help to ensure that your children and grandchildren can live in a better world that never knows of atrocities such as the Holocaust. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. You could stand up for her, it's fine. That's okay, they wanted to. We could take about 2 or 3 questions, and then we're going to finish up with Hatikva and Marev. So if anybody has a question, you can raise your hand. I'm sorry about the sound. I hope it was okay. We'll have a recording for you guys to be able to watch it. If anybody wants to talk to Ruth or her family after, you're more than welcome. Oh, you have a question?
What point did that nation? I don't know. Yeah. That's the honest. I knew we were in trouble. Yes. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Yes.
Thank you very, very much, Ruth Cohen, for sharing your very interesting and moving story. We appreciate it so very much. We have some thank yous. First of all, to the people who were involved in putting together this program. If you have a written program, you can see who those people are, but most especially the rabbis, Rabbi Rosenbaum, Rabbi Weinberg, and the members of the Holocaust Committee and the dedicated community members who helped make this evening possible, most especially Menashe Katz, who did a tremendous amount of hard work for the technical side. There's a lot that goes into these programs. Also, Josh Breitstein, Manucha Wolf, Simi Franco in the Shul office, and Vital Signs, who took a serious role in the Zoom version of this program. Lori Voigt, the person who did the captioning for the deaf and hard of hearing. So thank you to all those people. May Hashem continue to give us all strength and perseverance against those that still seek to destroy us. May He fortify us with faith, courage, and hope, now and always. Thank you all for coming. Marev is going to be here in the main sanctuary immediately following the program. To end the program, I'd like to call Mayor Frankel. Is he here? There he is, to lead us in Hatikva.
Kol od valevav benima nefesh Yehudi Omiyah Ulefatei Mizrach Kadima Metzion Sophia Odle Tigvateinu Hatikva כבר שnosam לי עושם חפשי בארצנו ציון בירושלים לי עושם חפשי בארצנו ציון בירושלים